Good evening, everyone, and welcome to North Olympic Land Trust's 13th Annual Conservation Breakfast. Each year, this event is an opportunity for our community to come together to celebrate our shared love for this incredible place that we call home. We are so pleased that you could join us for breakfast for dinner and an exciting event program this evening. My name is Amanda, and I work on communications and community engagement here at the Land Trust. It has been my pleasure to help put together a great event for you to watch while you enjoy eating breakfast for dinner. Last March, the pandemic was new, and we had to quickly pivot to present our 2020 Conservation Breakfast event in a series of 3 online presentations. This spring, with a year of virtual programming under our belts, we've put things together in a slightly different way. The program that you are about to enjoy was recorded over the past few weeks and brought together to present to you live this evening. The event recording will also be available for folks to enjoy and share after the event, and we definitely encourage you to do so. As many of you know, the mission of the Land Trust is to conserve the lands that sustain the communities of Clallam County. We are honored and humbled to be supported by the wonderful members of our community and by our business partners. Special thanks to our sponsors this evening: Botanica, Country Air Natural Foods, Ennis Arbor Farm, the Jamestown Sklallam Tribe, Koenig Subaru, Peninsula Environmental Group, Natural Systems Design, Sound Community Bank, the customers of Sunny Farms, and Windrose Cellars. Now, I am super excited for the program that we have to share with you this evening. Our featured speaker is Cameron Macias, a young scientist and member of the Lower Elwha Clallam Tribe, who has been working on fascinating projects on and around the Elwha River. We are also thrilled to present our 2021 Outstanding in the Field Award to Kaleen Cottingham, whose words of wisdom and advice as she retires from nearly 14 years at the helm of the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office are not to be missed. Following the award presentation, we will hear a Land Trust update from Executive Director Tom Sanford, and there will be an opportunity for you to learn more about how you can support the work of North Olympic Land Trust. With that, I'm happy to introduce you to the newest member of the Land Trust team, Alex. Alex joined us in January as Development Director and has brought a wealth of experience and energy to the organization. Alex will be presenting our land acknowledgement this evening. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Amanda, for that warm welcome. It's so great to meet all of you. I'm excited for the day when we can be in person. We'd like to begin our program today with the recognition that the lands North Olympic Land Trust works to conserve are on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Jamestown Sklallam, Lower Elwha Clallam, Makah, and Quileute tribes, who continue to lead our area in environmental stewardship. We are deeply appreciative for our relationship with the tribes of the peninsula. We express our respect and gratitude to the tribal elders and members for their enduring principles of reciprocity, care, and protection of the Olympic Peninsula, and for teaching us about this place. We recognize the negative impacts of European colonization on tribes' access to traditional lands and ways of life. As such, we strive to understand this damage and support tribes' cultures and ways of living. We are grateful to this land and waterways for their benevolence and their beauty. Next, you'll hear from Kim Sager-Fradkin, the Wildlife Program Manager for the Lower Elwha Clallam Tribe, who will introduce today's speaker, Cameron Macias. You may remember Kim from last year when she presented at Conservation Breakfast. We're grateful to have Kim as one of our board members, and if that's not enough, she also serves on our Conservation Committee, which is a team of experts who help us make important conservation decisions. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you so much to the North Olympic Land Trust for inviting us and allowing us to participate in the 2021 Conservation Breakfast, happening virtually. I am very honored to welcome Cameron Macias as the next guest speaker and give you a little bit of insight into Cameron and my history with Cameron. So as the Wildlife Program Manager for the Lower Elwha Clallam Tribe, I hire young scientists, and Cameron came to me in early 2014 and applied for a wildlife technician job. At the time, Cameron was living in Hawaii and studying oceanography or marine biology at the University of Hawaii, but she was moving back to town and interested in our job. So we interviewed her remotely, and it was great because honestly, Cameron had virtually no experience, but she had this incredible enthusiasm. And I always remember her interview because when we asked her whether she'd ever used a GPS unit, she kind of giggled and said, "Well, I've used the GPS unit in my car." And then when we asked her if she'd ever used a map or a compass, she said that she had used a map and a compass when she was in the 6th grade and went to camp at Nature Bridge on Lake Crescent. So while we really loved her enthusiasm, Cameron actually did not end up getting the job at that time because we had another more experienced applicant. But I always remembered Cameron as a young tribal member who was really interested in studying science. So when Cameron came back from Hawaii, she came in and met me, and I ended up hiring her as an intern. And she demonstrated proficiency in the field and a level of excitement about what we were doing, and proved herself as a capable field worker. And we ended up hiring her in the fall of 2014. And really the rest is history. Cameron has been an incredible asset to the program of the Lower Elwha tribe. She has worked on a variety of projects with us, from American dippers to studying river otters and looking at wildlife recolonization of the Elwha after dam removal. And because Cameron demonstrated such excitement for the field and such strong desire to learn, when I was applying for a grant to study mountain lions and bobcats, I actually wrote her in as a potential graduate student. And Cameron is now a graduate student at the University of Idaho studying bobcat and cougar genetics. And Cameron has now adapted and moved from a Master of Science program to a PhD program, where she's incorporating a lot more bobcat work. And we're so excited for her and so excited to see where the future brings her. But it's really an honor for me to introduce Cameron. She has been a joy to mentor. I hope I can continue to mentor her, and I really look forward to her talk, and I really look forward to where she goes from here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Kim, for that great introduction. Again, my name is Cameron Macias. I'm a PhD student at the University of Idaho. I'm a member of the Lower Elwha tribe, and I've been working with the tribe's wildlife program for going on 7 years now. During that time, I've worked on a variety of different research projects, mostly focused on large mammals in the tribe's historic treaty area. And a project that I'm really proud to have been involved with is the Elwha River Restoration Project following dam removal. So today I'm going to be talking about our research on how wildlife have responded to Elwha dam removal. So for those of you who may be tuning in from out of the area, the Elwha is on the Olympic Peninsula in western Washington. It's west of Seattle and directly south of Vancouver Island. So Elwha dam removal is the largest dam removal project ever undertaken in the world. This is a huge project. It's been an amazing process that took many, many decades. So the dams were in place for 100 years. And from the day they were put in, the Elwha tribe fought for their removal because they knew those dams were going to be the end of their subsistence harvest of fish. The Elwha historically supported all Pacific salmonids, but the dams were built without fish ladders, which are these structures that allow fish to swim up and over and beyond the dams. Without these structures, the dams just completely block their movement. There were still salmon that came to spawn in the gravels below the dams, as you can see in this picture. So the first dam that was built on the river was the Elwha Dam. It was built between 1910 and 1913 by an explorer named Thomas Aldwell. And he came to the Olympic Peninsula and he wanted to create hydroelectricity for this little town of Port Angeles. And so he did. He built the dam 7.9 kilometers from the mouth of the river, which became the extent of how far salmon could travel upstream. And 100 years later, After Congress passed an act that authorized the removal of both dams, and after many, many years of planning, removal began in September of 2011 and was completed a year later. The Glines Canyon Dam was the second dam built between 1925 and 1927. It was a much larger dam built further upriver at 21.6 kilometers from the mouth. Its removal began the same year as the lower dam in 2011, but took much longer to be fully removed. So it was completed in the fall of 2014, although some additional work was done in 2015 to remove some of the remaining large rocky debris that was still blocking fish passage. So in preparation for dam removal, people were really focused on fish restoration, right? Because, salmon were the primary motivation for dam removal. And there was also a lot of talk about revegetation, like will plants be able to grow in this sediment that's been underwater for 100 years? There was also a lot of talk about sediment as well, because there was 100 years of sediment built up behind those dams, millions of cubic yards of sediment. So there was a lot of research around salmon and revegetation and sediment, but there wasn't a lot of talk about the response of wildlife. So Kim, with the Lower Ottawa tribe, and some colleagues on the Olympic Peninsula were really interested in knowing how wildlife would respond to dam removal. And in 2010, they got a grant to study river-dependent wildlife. So this was about 4 years before I started working with the Elwha Wildlife Program, but I did catch the tail end of this research, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And so this grant was to look at how river otters and American dippers in the Elwha would respond to the removal of the dams and the restoration of salmon and all the nutrients that salmon bring into the ecosystem. So the Elwha lived without salmon nutrients for 100 years, and they wanted to know what it would mean for wildlife when salmon came back into the river. My slide progressed without me. Well, salmon bring a lot of nutrients into the ecosystem. Whoops, sorry about that. Salmon bring a lot of nutrients into the ecosystem. So they're born in freshwater. They leave to spend the majority of their lives in the ocean, where they grow into big adult salmon. And when they return to the freshwater to spawn, they bring with them all of these marine-derived nutrients from the ocean that are more enriched than the nutrients found in freshwater ecosystems. So they bring all of this marine carbon and nitrogen into the ecosystem. And when they die or they're eaten by animals, these marine nutrients enhance the freshwater nutrient pool. So you can think of these marine nutrients brought by salmon as sort of like a multivitamin for other organisms in the freshwater ecosystem. So starting with river otters, they are really ecologically tied to the Elwha River. And the goals of this study were to determine distribution and movement patterns of otters. So which areas they're using and how they're moving along the Elwha, and to use an analysis called stable isotope analysis to look at the levels of marine-derived nutrients in their diets. So this study took place from 2010 to 2014, so before, during, and after dam removal. So I was hired on as a wildlife technician, the tail end of this project, and I was fortunate to be there for the last few captures and then for quite a bit of the radio tracking of otters. So over the course of this study, we trapped up and down the Elwha, and we were able to catch 14 river otters. And so once we captured an otter, they would be anesthetized and brought to a veterinarian clinic to have a radio tracking device implanted. And once the otters were fully recovered, after about a day, we would usually keep them overnight to monitor them. Then we would bring them back to where they were captured and release them, and then start radio tracking to monitor their daily movement and activity patterns. And we found that otters moved widely throughout the Elwha watershed, and they also left the Elwha a lot. They definitely used the Strait of Juan de Fuca. They moved 18 miles west and 9 miles east. And they also used the Port Angeles Harbor a lot. So these Elwha river otters were moving around a ton and used all kinds of different habitat. And when we looked at the amount of marine-derived nutrients in the otter diets, using the stable isotope analysis, we found that otters that were caught high in the watershed prior to dam removal and used areas above the dam that didn't have access to salmon, they had very low amounts of marine-derived carbon and nitrogen in their diet. Otters that used the Elwha but didn't leave very often had intermediate amounts of marine-derived nutrients. And otters that used the marine environment up and down the coast, and they had the highest amounts of marine-derived carbon and nitrogen in their diet. And so they were clearly accessing salmon. So then we looked at American dippers. And again, most of this work was conducted before I joined the team. So like otters, American dippers are ecologically linked to the rivers exclusively. So this is a really cool shot. You can see that the dipper has a salmon egg in its mouth. And so the goals of this research were to look at body condition and demographics in relation to the amount of marine-derived nutrients. Again, like with the otters. So the otter study took place only in the Elwha, but the dipper work was conducted at 4 watersheds. And again, this work started prior to dam removal. So in the Elwha, we looked at sites both above and below the dams, so sites with access to salmon and sites without. And we looked at Barnes Creek off of Lake Crescent, where there's also no access to salmon. And then we looked at 2 rivers that do have salmon, the Solduck and the Dungeness. So over the course of the study, we banded 246 dippers across the 4 watersheds. The royal we banded them. This is another fun photo of a dipper with a steelhead jumping in the background behind it. And like the otters, we found that dippers without access to salmon had really low levels of marine-derived carbon and nitrogen in their diets. And in areas with salmon, dippers had higher levels of marine-derived nitrogen and carbon in their diets. So what does this mean? Well, we found that adult dippers were 13 times more likely to be year-round residents in the areas where they had access to salmon compared to dippers in areas without salmon that were more prone to be migratory. And dippers with access to salmon were 20 times as likely to double brood in a given year. So they were 20 times more likely to successfully fledge a nest and then immediately breed again and then set up another successful nest, which is pretty amazing because this is their primary driver of reproductive success. So after the work on river-dependent wildlife, we started another big research project to look at terrestrial wildlife. So Kim collaborated with the USGS, the National Park Service, and Huxley at Western Washington University, and got a study funded by the Fish and Wildlife Service to study wildlife recolonization on the Elwha lake beds. So this photo is really great for visualizing the former lake level. So just beyond the deer across the river, you can see the former lake line. And so these deer are standing on the former lake bottom. And so there's a lot of new habitat now. So this is a map of the Elwha watershed. And you can see the arrows pointing to the former Elwha Dam and the Aldwell Reservoir, which is just outside of the Olympic National Park. And the second arrow is pointing to the former Glines Canyon Dam and the Mills Reservoir, which is inside the park. And so this is just to get a sense of the geography of the area. So when the dams were taken out and the reservoirs were drained, suddenly there was 800 acres of new habitat for wildlife. So we know that wildlife can play a role in the ecosystem, that they do play a role in the ecosystem. So wildlife can help with seed dispersal. So small mammals and birds, for example, they can alter water flows like beavers, and they can shape the structure of vegetation, so like deer and elk browsing. But on the other hand, they may also prey on different grasses and seeds that are important for the revegetation. So we wanted to know what animals were going to move in and how quickly and how they might play a role in the river restoration process. So we did some small mammal trapping surveys across both of the former reservoirs from 2014 to 2016. And we sampled more plots on Mills than we did on Aldwell because it's a larger area. And over the 3 years, we detected a lot of small mammals, and we detected more and more each year. So we caught weasels and bushy-tailed wood rats and mice and bulls and shrews. And across the 3 years, the most commonly captured species were Peromyscus, which are deer mice and Keen's mice. So they were the most daring of the small mammal explorers. Even before there was much plant cover on the lake beds, we were finding them really far from the forest edge, usually in areas where there was at least a little bit of cover, like downed wood. So they were definitely the most common small mammal species that we encountered. And over the course of the study, we documented 14 different recolonizing small mammal species. And 13 of the 14 were found on Mills, so with the highest species diversity up on the Mills Reservoir. We also did beaver surveys. So beavers create nice overwintering habitat for salmon. And we knew from a previous study that most of the beaver sign along the Elwha was documented near the mouth of the river. So we did these really fun surveys where we walked the perimeter of both lake beds, as well as all tributary streams and side channels. And we looked for any type of beaver sign. In 2014, we saw just a little bit of sign on Aldwell. And by 2016, 2017, we were seeing a ton of sign on both lake beds, including some damming activity. It's very small dams, I might add. So beavers are definitely using the reservoirs. And then finally, we wanted to see how deer and elk were using the lake beds. So a major part of Elwha restoration involved this massive revegetation effort. And there was some concern that deer and elk were going to move in and put a lot of pressure on the sensitive vegetation. And so we went up and set plots up along both lake beds for pellet and browse surveys. So we would visit each plot in the fall to clear pellets and then go back in the spring to count new pellets to see if deer and elk had used the lake beds over the winter. And then we also looked at browse. So we counted every cottonwood and willow, as well as all of the other plant species at each plot. And we looked at how much these plants were being browsed by deer and elk. And so from these surveys, the biggest trend we saw over the 3 years was that elk increased their use of the Mills Reservoir each year. Deer were more consistent between the years. There were very few deer using Aldwell, and not much elk use on Aldwell either. There were, we had some radio-collared elk we had some radio-collared elk simultaneous to this work. And the elk would explore the lake bed, but they haven't really decided to move in yet. And again, the Aldwell Reservoir is outside of the national park. It's right along the Highway 101 and near homes. So the deer and elk may just not feel, they may feel more vulnerable there. So from the cottonwoods and willows that we counted during these surveys, we found that by year 3, 50% of all cottonwoods and willows that we surveyed had been browsed to some degree. And of the other species we surveyed at each plot, we were able to see that deer and elk were selecting for certain plants, like all of the bitter cherry and Nootka rose, and about half of the big leaf maple had some level of browse. And then by 2017, we started seeing some plant succession. So different plant species were starting to grow, and salmonberry became the most common species across our plots. All of the plants had some level of browse, and we found some hotspots of browsing activity across the lake beds, but nothing that raised a red flag. So what we found is that the plants on both reservoirs are doing just fine under the browsing pressure that we documented with these surveys. So the deer and elk are not causing an issue with revegetation. So to quickly summarize all of this Elwha research, otters and dippers with access to salmon experienced positive life history results. Small mammals species composition has increased across both reservoirs. Beavers have successfully recolonized both of the reservoirs, and deer and elk are found in both reservoirs, and elk are using the Mills lake bed more than the Aldwell, more each year actually. And deer and elk found on both reservoirs, they're not causing undue stress to the plants there. The plants are still growing, so they're getting really tall outside of the browsing pressure, so we saw really little impact to the plants. So there are a lot of co-authors on this work. Kim Sager-Fradkin with the Lower Elwha Tribe, Drs. Kurt Jenkins and Rebecca McCaffrey with USGS, Drs. Chris Tanra and Pete Morrow with the Smithsonian, and Dr. Patty Happy with the National Park Service. And so, looking ahead, Elwha River Restoration has been such an important project, and we definitely plan to continue monitoring Elwha wildlife. Right now, 10 years after dam removal, we're planning to continue monitoring wildlife recolonization in the Elwha using game cameras. So we'll be deploying cameras on Mills, in Aldwell, and in Geyser Valley to learn more about what species are there and what species are moving in, and look at the seasonality of when they're using those habitats. And I'm currently at the University of Idaho. I'm working on the Olympic Cougar Project, and my hope is to return to the Elwha after grad school to continue doing wildlife research. So thank you everyone for tuning in to hear about our Elwha research.
Thank you, Cameron. That presentation was excellent. I, in particular, really enjoyed the part about the American dippers, one of my favorite birds on the Olympic Peninsula. We are so grateful to our supporters, some of whom you'll hear from at the end of today's Conservation Breakfast. We hope you'll join them by giving. It's easy. All you have to do is go to our homepage, northolympiclandtrust.org, find the orange donate button in the top right corner, click it, fill out the form, hit submit. That's it. Couldn't be any easier. In fact, it's the same system you're already used to. This year, the first 25 donors of $250 or more will receive a Land Trust goodie bag full of local delights. You must donate before Monday the 12th to qualify, and we will contact recipients on Tuesday the 13th of April. We'll drop those bags off to local donors before June or mail them if necessary. So don't delay, get your donations in. And now a word from our Executive Director, Tom.
With that, I'd like to first introduce myself. My name is Tom Sanford. I'm the Executive Director with North Olympic Land Trust. And I'm really excited to transition into something we've been doing now for a number of years, honoring people and organizations that really are having a significant impact on the quality of life in the community here on the North Olympic Peninsula. And it is with what we call our Outstanding in the Field Award. It's something we started 7-8 years ago to honor these people protecting important lands, farmland, rivers, forests. Past recipients have included the Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe, Jefferson Land Trust, the Lower Elwha S'Klallam Tribe, Dick Goen, the S'Klallam Conservation District, North Olympic Salmon Coalition, and last year, local wildlife photographer and landscape photographer Pat O'Hara. So this year, I am really excited to present this award to Kaleen Cottingham, Director of the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office. And this is a time, it's actually a little different. The award is not just here from North Olympic Land Trust, but on behalf of over 50 organizations, tribes, agencies, cities across S'Klallam and Jefferson County that together have received over $200 million of funding from the state's Recreation and Conservation Project on over 430 projects since 2007. Now, RCO and its predecessor have been around longer than 2007, but I'm focusing on that because that's the year that Kaleen Cottingham took the reins of the organization. And they're now really known for their amazing ability to vet and then distribute these funds. These are local taxpayer funds coming back to us that are really greatly improving our quality of life. As Kaleen right now is preparing to retire, We are thrilled with honoring her for these incredible accomplishments. And she runs this small but mighty organization that has done so much for the state. And before I pass this over to Kaleen, I just wanted to give you a taste of the kinds of things on the peninsula that we've seen. So if you're into the Olympic Discovery Trail, these are the folks to thank. Think about things like the Spruce Railroad tunnels, the Elwha Bridge, the Larry Scott upgrades, the Dry Creek Bridge, segments near Blinn, the Port Angeles waterfront changes, Francis Street Park, Dungeness River Railroad Bridge updates. Beyond that, there's the Cape Flattery Trail, the Williams Shore Pool work, Agnew soccer fields, Salt Creek renovations at the park, Shane Park work, lighting at Civic Field, trail work happening by the Backcountry Horsemen, Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance, our local ports, moorage, launch areas. In the world of farmland conservation, things like Stone Farm, Dungeness Valley Creamery, Finn River Cidery, Finn Hall Farm, Short Family Farm, Wonderland in the 80, Glendale Farm. I have a huge passion for the work like at the shot virtually behind me at the Lyre Conservation Area, Pisht Conservation Area, Clallam River Conservation Area. And I can't go without mentioning the amazing work through the North Olympic Peninsula Lead Entity for Salmon Recovery and the Hood Canal Coordinating Council for things like replacing hundreds of culverts, acquiring key lands for habitat, supporting the levee setback on the Dungeness, revegetation, such as revegetation on the Elwha with the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe, the restoration of Kilsit Harbor, engineered log jams, and I've only touched the surface. So I'm excited now to present this award, and on the line in her final days at the Recreation and Conservation Office, I've got Kaleen with us. And as we present this award for her incredible leadership, we wanted to hear a few thoughts from her and gain some of her perspective from her experience. So therefore, on behalf of North Olympic Land Trust, organizations, tribes, agencies, and citizens across the peninsula that benefit from your work, we'd like to present you with the 2021 Outstanding in the Field Award for what you've done to help bring our local tax dollars back to the community in a manner that supports conservation and recreation and improving all of our daily lives. Ladies and gentlemen, Kaleen Cottingham.
Thank you, Tom. It's truly an honor to receive this award, and I'm quite humbled. When I announced my retirement, I really wasn't prepared for the amount of love that's been thrown at me. It's just wonderful. So thank you again for this award. I checked our records, and as you well know, you've had quite a few projects. You, the Land Trust, have had quite a few projects through us and have, I think, a half a dozen or more in progress right now. And I just wanted to thank you for being willing to take on these big, significant landscape-altering projects. I'm very happy with the work that you've done up there, and humbled, actually, at the citizen engagement that you are part of. I wanted to thank you for having the vision and not shying away from these larger projects. It takes guts, fortitude, and bravery to envision the future and then take the steps to take action to do it, and to not waver when times are tough. You know, over the last, in my 14 years as the director of the RCO, we've gone through the Great Recession and then the pandemic, and all through that, we are very worried about the level of funding, but amazingly enough, we've maintained a pretty healthy and robust investment in our outdoors, and I'm very proud of that. So again, I think the kind of civic engagements that land trusts and others bring to conservation, recreation, and recovery are very important. They're the public-private enterprises that make this work so gratifying. I was asked to talk about what I'm most proud of, especially as it relates to the North Olympic Peninsula. And you've done some incredible work. Your partners have done some incredible work. All of the tribes and governments and nonprofits up there have done some incredible work. And you may have stole my thunder a little bit, so I'm going to highlight some things that I'm most proud of. Of course, the Olympic Discovery Trail comes first on my list. From the very beginning, it's been a wonder to behold. The amount of investment both at the state level and the local level with matching resources, incredible. The RCO has about $8 million invested in the trail, which for most of you, you know that it runs from Port Townsend out to La Push. And the ribbon cutting earlier this year during the pandemic of the Spruce Railroad Tunnel, the last of the 2 tunnels out there, are quite incredible. I came up to the ribbon cutting on the first tunnel, and it's awe-inspiring. And as some of you may know this, I bought myself a retirement present of an electric bike, and I hope to get it up there and to try it out on the trail sometime when I retire. The next thing I'm very proud of is our commitment to conserving our farmlands. And there have been quite a few farms up there, the Dungeness farmland, the Dungeness Dairy, the Smith family farm, and one of my favorites, the Finn River Farm. It's always a pleasure to run across the Finn River folks at events serving up their cider. So very proud of the work that's been done to conserve our farmlands. We've got a new grant program to conserve working forest lands, community forests we're calling them. So hopefully in the future we'll see some community forest coming out of the North Olympic Peninsula. Another area I'm very proud of is our work in salmon recovery. We are the distributor of state and federal funds to bring back these iconic species and to assist in the recovery of southern resident killer whales. And so I'm very proud up there with the huge amount of work. We've been very engaged in the recovery of the Elwha River. Although our funding wasn't involved in the dam removal, we've been involved in the regeneration of the vegetation in the reservoirs and in the placing of log jams and other structures at the mouth of the river. And it's just phenomenal to see what's happening there, the rebuilding of the beaches and the salmon coming back. That's our goal, recovering salmon. So I'm very proud of that. There's the Lyre Estuary as well, which we were involved in with the Land Trust. And it's incredible. I came up to I don't know if we called it a ribbon cutting, the dedication of the estuary. It was a special place out there with all the driftwood, and I really appreciated being invited to that and for my agency to participate in doing that. We've invested a lot in the Dungeness River and the Pisht, Quilcene, the Dosey Wallops, the Duckabush, the Hoe. I just did that to prove that I can actually pronounce Washington geography for you. But anyway, we've had a finger in the recovery of all of those areas. Very important, the estuary work in particular, and protecting the riparian areas along the sides of those rivers. One of our most recent endeavors has been replacing the undersized culvert with a bridge that connects Island with Indian Island out there, Killisette River, and to see that estuary back to water flowing, the tidal water flowing through that area is incredible. So I hope to see the water quality improve in there and the fish species to thrive in that area. We've also done a lot in the North Olympic Peninsula on habitat conservation. One of my favorite areas is the work being done by the DNR in the Dabaw Bay area. It's a little south of you there, but I like to put it up there. It's been a decades-long endeavor to protect the shoreline in Dabaw Bay. So I was also asked to talk about my advice for the future. And, you know, I've worked in the natural resources area for nearly 50 years. And I'm just a diehard natural resources conservation person. And so here are my learnings over that time period. You know, we've come to learn that the forest management practices of the past were not good for the ecosystems. And we've seen a lot of transformative approaches to natural resource management in our forested lands. We've also learned that it's not good practice to strip our rivers of the downed logs. Very important part of helping salmon thrive and structuring the watersheds to be amenable to housing them. We've also learned that we shouldn't be building quite so close to the shorelines, and especially now with climate change, the importance of setting everything back and up to avoid inundation is going to be even more important. We've learned that we shouldn't be armoring our shorelines, and we're doing a lot of work now to remove armoring, in fact, because of what it does to the natural processes of our ecosystems. We, of course, have learned of the detrimental impact that certain chemicals have on our natural systems. You know, back in the 60s and 70s with DDT, and recently with brake pads, and even just recently we've learned of a chemical in tires that impairs coho salmon. So all of those things are learning, and we're changing our ways to be better for our ecosystems. We've even learned to leave our grasses brown in the summertime to save water. So all those things are learning. So here are my advice for the future as we go forward. They're not making land anymore. I don't know who there is, but they're not. So we have to do a better job of taking care of what we have. We have to protect what is working and make sure that it doesn't get degraded. And we have to do a lot to restore. So that's a really important role that land trusts play. So thank you for doing that. We need to adapt better to climate change. We need to take into consideration how we can reduce the impacts of climate change and stall the carbon impact to our environment. So it's a huge issue, and land trusts are doing their part, and we need to reach out and do more. Population growth is a huge impact. And I don't know where we're going to house all the people that are continuing to move here, but we have to do it with taking into account our ecosystems and our environment. Government can't do it alone. We cannot put enough money towards it. We cannot regulate. So the public, the non-governmental, the local governments, the tribes, they all have to help in this battle to protect our iconic species and our landscapes. The next piece of advice is we have to sell it better. And by sell it, I mean we have to tell the story of why it's important that we conserve land. I don't think we explain that enough. I get asked many times a year by legislators and others, don't we have enough? Haven't we done enough? Haven't we bought enough land? Haven't we conserved enough land? And I say, no, we haven't. We still have to do more. The population is growing, but we have to market it better, not only to legislators and elected officials, but to the general public. And finally, my bit of advice is we need to do a better job of recruiting and educating the next generation. I'm retiring at the end of a long natural resources career, a very gratifying career, and we need to make sure that there's the next generation that are coming to take my place in 25 years. Who is going to be the environmental and conservation leaders of the future? And it's up to us to train them, to recruit them, to give them the passion to do this. And I'm sure that you're doing that every day, and I thank you for it, but I think we need to ramp that up. So with that's my favorite things, my kind of what hasn't worked, and then my recommendations for the future. And again, I'm humbled for getting this award from you. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you over the last 14 years and beyond. And hopefully in my future, even if it's just on an e-bike along the Olympic Discovery Trail, that I run into you again. So thank you.
Thank you, Kaleen. Thinking on behalf of the entire community, we really, really appreciate your experience, your wisdom, and the leadership you provided, and the amazing things that have happened at and through the Recreation and Conservation Office. And we really, really do look forward to seeing you up here cruising by on the Olympic Discovery Trail soon. And now I'm excited to turn our attention to, what's been going on with the Land Trust over the last year or so, and take a moment just to catch everyone up. So as we all know, it's been a year. It's been a challenge, a lot of pivoting, a lot of new learning, how to make a business run well through this, but also how to connect with people. And a year ago, we would have all been together at Conservation Breakfast, like 400 people at the Vern Burton, really enjoying each other's company. And here we are a year later doing it again. And the truth is, we miss you all. We miss the annual picnic, harvest dinner, farm week, our annual meeting, just taking people out for walks on properties or small group learning about engineered log jams together. So we're looking to bring a lot of that stuff back. It looks like the world's starting to warm up a little bit. No pun intended. And the reality is we miss you. And so there were a few things that were really, I thought, very successful last year. One of the pivots was when we really started to say, our farms are hurting. Our community wants to support them. And so North Olympic Land Trust, Jefferson Land Trust, North Olympic Development Council, and WSU Extension, together we said, well, let's just raise some money, give it to local farmers, and have them give the same amount back in the form of product to local food banks. And everyone wins. And the community really rallied. And eventually the counties came on board with some stimulus dollars, and a total of $70,000 went out to a little over a dozen local farms to really help keep them strong through this period. It was also in the time of pivoting, instead of a harvest dinner where we gathered 200 plus people for a local meal, instead folks continued to be supportive and donate. And we did harvest farm shares, something we're looking actually to bring back again this year, where folks could support and in the process end up going home with a basket or a bag full of local produce that really highlights our local farms. And we were proud to buy all of that from local farms, making sure that they were, again, staying strong through this time. It was wonderful to have a 30th birthday party, really highlighting some of our founders and giving our Gary Colley Legacy Award to Gary Colley was great as our founder. And then other awards, and I'd point out our Farmer of the Year last year, focusing on community-supported agriculture. The idea that early in the year, you buy a farm share and you give the farmer the money, the seed money to get things going. And they then use that throughout the year and provide you with produce, and you get to reap the bounty of what they create. So a number of local farms are signing people up for CSAs for 2021 right now. There's some information on our website. Please sign up. While all that was going on within the Land Trust, there was some really good conservation work continuing. It was right a year ago now that we purchased River's Edge in partnership with the Jamestown S'Klallam tribe. And so this 104 acres now in Dungeness is coupled with 600 acres already conserved down there. And it is now forever going to either be river habitat as future levee setback occurs on the property, and a big portion of it will forever remain as farmland. And it was our community's generosity coupled with some state funds and the creative thinking of partners, which I can't highlight the Jamestown tribe enough, that really made this amazing thing happen. And you'll continue to see changes on that property in the years ahead as levee setback and some other improvements start to happen. In addition, let's see, it was in August, we were able to purchase Clallam River Conservation Area. Now, this 69-acre property was the result of some really good planning. It was about a decade ago that, with some support from RCO, we were able to do a parcel by parcel analysis west of the Elwha to figure out what were the most important properties for salmon habitat. And so a local contractor, Mike Haggerty, did this research. And what he figured out was he was able to rank freshwater and nearshore properties of what actually is going to have a positive impact for salmon. And this property on Clallam River, of the hundreds of properties on the west end, the Western Strait, ranked as the number 3 property. And so we're excited that this important habitat is now permanently conserved. You can see in this picture actually a fair amount of invasive species. Over the year ahead, we're going to be doing a lot of invasive species control and eventually finding ways to open this property up for public access, but in a way that makes sure that we really maintain its conservation values. Looking forward, in our conservation work, you're going to be hearing in the next few weeks to months, you're going to be hearing a lot about some new conservation efforts along Ennis Creek here in Port Angeles, as well as the Elwha River. And those are some really new and exciting pieces. I can't share a lot of details yet, but you'll be hearing more to come. And we are going to be looking for some community support to make these things a reality. In addition, about late 2019, our county commissioners passed a conservation futures ordinance, which is basically a new way to collect funds here in Clallam County to directly support farmland conservation. And those funds are just now getting started to figure out how they'll get distributed, with about $270,000 to $300,000 a year to go towards farmland conservation. And look towards late 2020, an entire pipeline of opportunities are coming together, and we'll be able to use these conservation futures funds in partnership with some floodplains by design money, we hope, as well as federal, state, and local dollars to really leverage big impact on our local quality of life. Speaking of things that are coming, we're very excited about a project that we currently have in front of the state capital budget to be funded by RCO, which would be furthering that effort to conserve the most important properties west of the Elwha for salmon. And many, many, many of those are on the Hoko River. And the Hoko actually has 9 of the top 10 properties. And this project would conserve properties number 1, 6, 7, and 10, over 200 acres in one effort, all in partnership with the Makah tribe. And so as we track the state capital budget, we are hoping that soon we'll be able to report some really good news there. And then I also, speaking of studies, wanted to mention 2 other things that are happening and are pretty new. One is an economic benefit analysis that we recently completed with Jefferson Land Trust and the Trust for Public Land that's really noting how these efforts aren't just good for the environment, which they are, but in addition are having real impacts on our economy. And that is in the form of all sorts of things, from clean air, clean water, to products that are harvested, to just a straight up improvements in community health. And so that study has now been released and it's on our website. In addition, with Jefferson Land Trust and some funding from the Land Trust Alliance, we are doing a deep dive to understand what are the climate impacts of this we're expecting in this community over the next 40, 50 years. And how does that impact our conservation efforts? We're not quite ready to talk details on what we're going to do yet, but we do now have some amazing maps that we're just starting to share that really help us realize what is possible in our community. So with that, it continues to be a real honor to work as a part of these efforts. It is so powerful to be a part of a team that's making great things happen. We really appreciate everyone and all the support. It is only through partnership that great things can happen here. And thank you for everything everybody does, and I wish you all well.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Palayo. I'd like to thank the North Olympic Land Trust for doing an excellent job and service in protecting the farm, fish, and forests around Washington State and near my home. I'd also like to thank them for being excellent supporters in my completion of my Girl Scout Gold Award. To everyone at the North Olympic Land Trust, thank you for everything that you do. We hope you'll donate too.
Hi there, we're Tom and Allison Mahaney on the Dungeness River Dike Trail overlooking the River's Edge project. We choose to support the Land Trust because we believe that the Land Trust value of protecting land for farms, fish, and forests helps improve our lives, the lives of our children, and the lives of generations to come. We ask that you consider supporting the Land Trust today too. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Susan, and I'm an avid supporter of the North Olympic Land Trust. I hope you'll become a financial supporter too. It's all about sustaining the beauty and abundance of this wonderful place that we call home. Briefly, here's my story. When I fled Seattle 20 years ago, where I really enjoyed going to the farmers markets, one of my first stops was a Sequim Farmers Market here. And I immediately met Bob Caldwell, one of the founders of Friends of the Field, who was dishing up strawberry shortcake, which is a way that they help support themselves financially. We discussed Friends of the Field, and I fell in love with the whole concept of conserving farmland. I wrote them into my will. When they joined forces with the North Olympic Land Trust, they continued in their joint mission to preserve local farmlands, along with critical habitat protecting fish and forests. I updated my will. In this challenging year, we can celebrate that we have access to beautiful conserved outdoor spaces and can easily and safely visit our wonderful and abundant local farms as we preserve both body and soul. Giving doesn't have to be big. And though we're asking folks to give today, if that's not right for you, that's okay. Maybe later. I feel great, though, about my future legacy gift and about the annual giving that I do. Please support your community by supporting the Land Trust. Thank you, and I hope you're enjoying your breakfast.
Support farms, fish, and forests.
Thank you for attending 2021's Conservation Breakfast with North Olympic Land Trust. And thank you, presenters, for making this whole event possible and as wonderful as it was. We're so grateful to our supporters and will hope that you'll join them in supporting your community by donating to North Olympic Land Trust today. Super easy. Go to our homepage at northolympiclandtrust.org. Find the orange donate button in the upper right-hand corner. Click it, fill out the form, hit submit. That's it. It's the same system you're already used to. And just a friendly reminder, the first 25 donors of $250 or more will receive a Land Trust goodie bag full of local delights. You must donate before Monday the 12th to qualify, and we will follow up with recipients on Tuesday the 13th of April. We will drop off those bags to local donors before June, or if necessary, mail them. Thank you so much. I look forward to getting to know all of you.
And that concludes the program for our 13th annual Conservation Breakfast. I hope you had as much fun as I did, and I really hope you enjoyed eating breakfast for dinner this evening. As I mentioned before, the event recording will be available online, and we'll make sure to share with you exactly where you can find it and how you can share it with your friends and family. Have a great evening.